Hey guys, welcome to the video. In this video today I'm going to be showing you how to replace a battery in your car. So what I'm going to go through first is just a couple of the tools that we're going to need to replace the battery. Note that some tools are going to vary from car to car. Some cars are going to need different bits and pieces to replace different batteries. So again, we've got the Subaru in the garage today. This is what we're going to be doing the battery change on. Very straightforward one on these Subarus, nice and easy to do. Just going to give you a few little hints and tips on just bits and pieces to do as well. Some of the tools I'm going to show you at the moment you won't need. They're just so that I can do a couple of checks just to make sure that the battery is being charged by the alternator correctly and that nothing's draining the battery flat, which are just a couple of good checks to do if you do have the tools you can do it with. Alright, so first thing and most important thing, we have our safety glasses and gloves. So standard safety glasses, standard set of acid proof gloves. So basically batteries are full of acid, nasty stuff, you don't want to get it on your hands, so always wear gloves whenever you're dealing with batteries. Alright, so the next tool is a 10mm spanner. That's all I need to remove this battery. The battery here has got a clamp on it. That clamp has got two 10mm nuts on it. The battery terminals are both 10mm nuts on them as well, so that's all I need to undo all of that. Okay, so the next tool that I've got here as well is a battery terminal cleaning brush. So this little one here. The center there is for cleaning the terminals on the battery. You take the little cap off the top and it has a wire brush for cleaning the actual terminals themselves. Nice little cheap tool. You can pick them up from just about any auto parts shops for around about $4 or $5. Okay, so some of the other tools here. I've got my multimeter here for checking the alternator output. And I have my amp clamp here for checking the current draw to make sure that when everything's turned off, the car's all locked up and everything's switched off, there's nothing in the car that's draining the battery flat as well. That's what I'm going to use the amp clamp for. Again, you don't need these two tools to do a battery change, but they are handy just to get a better idea of what's going on within the car. Up the back here, you'll see a little black box sitting on top of the engine. All that is it's a memory protector. So basically, again, not something that you need, but definitely something that's handy. So what that does is when you remove the battery, you connect up the leads to the battery terminals. It keeps the car powered up so you don't lose things like your radio code, radio stations, bits and pieces like that. Just on that note, before you change any battery in any car, no matter how simple it looks, make sure to check your owner's manual for any special requirements that you need to do. European cars such as Mercedes, Audi and BMW do have step-by-step instructions on what you need to do to fit a new battery and to check to make sure that everything is working after that new battery has been fitted. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our gloves and glasses on and then we'll reset up the camera and we'll go through changing the battery. Okay, so we now have our safety glasses and gloves put on. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the clamp that holds down the battery. So I'll grab a 10mm spanner, undo these clamp bolts. Okay, so here on this back clamp bolt, you have got this plastic clip here that holds the earth wire in place. All you need to do to remove that clip, put the open end of your spanner over the bolt, get it on an angle like that, so it's sitting flush with the clip, push down, and that pops off like that. Okay, so now that we've got this bolt undone here, all I need to do, push down, pull the little hook out of the hole that it slots into, so that's undone, pull it up, and before we can remove this we're going to need to remove the negative battery terminal because that is sort of blocking that clamp in place. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hook up our memory minder. Again, you don't need one of these, but it's definitely handy. So we're going to grab the little leads out of our memory minder here, like that. Plug them in to the little power plug here. And what we're going to do is the black lead needs to be connected to a metal part of the engine. So this is our earth. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect this black lead down to the side of the engine, just down here. Just on there nicely. We'll keep those cables out of the way so we don't pinch them. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to connect our red clamp to our positive battery terminal. Now on Subarus, the positive battery terminal is got a big red cap on it. Red is always positive, black is always negative. So what you need to do if your car doesn't have one of these big red caps and you're not sure, the battery itself will have written on the battery what is positive and what is negative. So on the negative side of the battery, you'll see a little negative mark. On the positive side of the battery, there is stamped a positive mark. I'll show a picture of that now. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to hook up our positive lead on our memory minder to our positive lead on our battery. All I'm going to do there, open up the clamp, connect that on there. The little light on the memory minder has now come on, showing that it is connected. So we're just going to turn the switch on so the memory minder is switched on. We're going to sit this up here out of the way. Okay, so now we can remove our negative battery terminal. The memory minder will keep the car powered up so we won't lose any of our radio stations. So we're just going to undo this negative battery terminal just with the 10mm nut. Loosen it off and then take the terminal off. Always start with the negative battery terminal. This doesn't matter so much at the moment because the car is still powered up, so there's still power going through the car. But if you were not using a memory minder, what you want to do is you always want to take off the negative terminal first. If you take off the positive terminal, what happens is if your spanner or your ratchet or whatever you're using to undo it touches any metal part of the car or any grounded part of the car, what it will do is it will short out, it will create a big spark, and it does have the potential to actually blow the battery up. So you need to be very mindful of that, so always take the negative side off first. So we'll take the negative side off, we'll tuck him up there so it's out of the way. We'll then remove the clamp. So we'll lift that up out of the way. I always like to sit the clamps like that. So basically this part here was at the front, so I'll always point it towards the front of the car. Some clamps will have an arrow on them, some of them won't. This one is quite easy because it's got a nice big long bolt here. So you've got your nice big long bolt and a short bolt that goes at the back. So quite easy to remember, it'll only go on one way. Some cars, the bolts will be the same length, but the clamps may be different. So you see how on this clamp it's stepped down, on this part it's flat. So it does matter which way it goes on. Okay, so we'll undo the positive battery terminal now. Just be nice and careful. Be very careful when you're undoing the positive battery terminal as well. If your spanner or your ratchet or whatever you're using, if you were to put that down and touch that part of the terminal to that terminal, it will still spark and still has the same possible blowing the battery up. Okay, so we're going to loosen that off nice and loose. Alright, we will take that terminal off. We will lift our old battery out. Some batteries, this is quite a small one. It does have a weight on it. This battery is 11.5 kilograms, so it's quite light. You can quite easily lift that out with one hand. Some batteries are bigger, some batteries are heavier. You do need to be mindful of the weight of the battery. Don't hurt your back, don't hurt any other parts of your body. As well, when we're using the memory minder, this lead is still live. So if I touch this against the metal part of the car, it would spark. The memory minder does have a fuse in it, so it would blow the fuse and disconnect the power before any major damage occurred, but just something to be careful of. So I'm just going to hold this here so I know it doesn't touch anything. Lift the handle up, lift the battery carefully out, put the battery down there on the ground. Okay, so that terminal there is fine, it's just going to sit there so it can't touch anything. Okay, so what you want to do, take out the little plastic box that the battery sits in, give it a bit of a clean out. That's what I grabbed the rag for. So I'll do that now, I'll clean it all up and we'll get ready to put the battery back in. Okay, so as far as selecting the correct battery for your car, what you want to do, if you're not sure what battery your car takes, there are good websites out there, like the Century website. You can actually search up the make and model for your car and it will recommend a battery for you. Also, if you're not sure, what you can do is you can take your old battery into an auto parts shop and get them to match one up for you. Or you could take a bunch of photos of the part number and bits and pieces like that and the capacities and everything for the battery and take them in with you as well. Show the photos to the parts store. They should be able to match your battery up for you with that. Another good thing to have is the measurements for the battery. So Sometimes they won't be able to match it up just off the number and the capacities of the battery, but what they will be able to do is match it up through the size of the battery. So another good thing that you need to be mindful of, batteries have got ratings on them. So every battery is rated differently. So you've got your CCA rating, which is your amp rating, so your cold cranking amp rating. So that's basically the power output of the battery or the strength of it. All automotive batteries for cars, generally modern cars, some cars are different. Some cars run 6-volt batteries, some cars run 12-volt batteries. Trucks tend to run 24 volts. Most standard cars are 12 volts, so just keep that in mind as well. So you'll have your amp rating, so your CCA rating, you'll have your voltage, which will be written on top of the battery. You'll have your reserve capacity, which will be written on top of the battery, and you'll have your amp hour rating on the battery as well. What you need to do is those ratings on the battery need to be the equivalent or more than what has come out of the car. Don't ever put a battery in that's lower rated than what the car needs, otherwise you will have issues. Okay, so now we've got our right battery. Basically the battery that I just took out I'm going to put back in as there's nothing wrong with it. So we've gone to the store, we've got our new battery. We're going to now clean up our battery terminals ready for the new battery to go in. So we've cleaned up our little box that goes in the bottom. We're going to grab our terminal brush. Okay, so we're going to use the end here, down into the terminal, twist it round. With the terminal brushes, only ever go one way. Don't turn it around the other way because it ruins the brushes. Okay, give that a good clean there. Yep, that all looks nice and clean. Now we're going to get our negative battery terminal. Just be careful not to touch it against the positive one there. And we're going to do the same thing. Push the brush down in there. Good couple of turns. Yep, that's all nice and clean. So I'll put that one back up there away from the positive battery terminal. Okay, we'll sit our brush back over there. Okay, I've got a permanent marker here as well. When you buy a new battery, always a good thing to do, write the date on the battery that you put it into the car. Then that way, if it does have issues in the future, you'll know when you fitted the battery and you'll know how old the battery is as well. That is often a good helpful bit of information when it comes to replacing batteries. If it's only 6 months old, chances are there's probably something else going on with the car, or you may have a dodgy battery that may need to be replaced under warranty. If the battery's 5 years old, it's probably going to need to be replaced. Okay, so we'll fit the battery back up. So grab the battery. Again, we will hold our positive battery terminal up out of the way so it doesn't touch anything. Make sure it doesn't touch anything metal. Carefully lower the battery back down into the car. Make sure it goes back into its little box there properly, which it does. So that's spot on. Okay, so the battery's now sitting in there like that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our clamp back on. So we'll just get this down in place. Put the other side back down in its place. Lovely. Alright, we'll grab our spanner and we will do these back up. Okay, so that clamp is done back up now. Done back up nice and firm. They don't need to be super tight. They just need to be firm, just enough so the battery can't move around in there and the clamp can't slide along the battery. Okay, so now we've got our cleaned up positive terminal, we're going to put that back on. So we'll put the positive terminal back on there, push it down as far as you can get it to go by hand. Put it back up. Now again, I do have to be mindful here, as I've got the memory protector fitted to the battery terminal at the moment. I do need to be mindful not to touch anything metal with my spanner. So what I'm doing is I put the spanner in my hand like that, and I use my hand to touch any metal part of the car like that, rather than the spanner touching it. So do these up, nice and firm. They don't need to be super tight. Remember, it's only a little 6mm bolt. If you over tension it, you could snap the bolt, and you can also over tension the terminals as well. So what you want to do, nice and firm, just like that. Some people do like to put a contact grease on the terminals. I personally don't do it. Some people do it to avoid corrosion. It's a personal preference thing, so up to you if you'd like to do that. You can buy that sort of stuff from your local parts shops as well. Okay, so we're going to refit the negative battery terminal. So we're going to put our little clamp back down on there, like that. Reconnect the negative battery terminal. Just be mindful if you have disconnected a battery that has not had a memory protector put to it, when you connect the battery terminal again, it may cause a spark. Just like that. Alright, just give them a bit of a wiggle, make sure they're not loose. No. Okay, so they're all connected back up now, so that's absolutely fine, there's no issue there. So now what I want to do is I want to disconnect the memory protector. So first things first, bring that back over here. We will turn our little switch off, turn that off. We will disconnect our positive, disconnect our negative from down there, and we will put the memory protector away. Okay, so now that we have the memory protector away, what we're going to do is just going to sit the cover there like that. Just check, make sure all the bolts are definitely tight. Check your terminals, check your clamp, double check, that's all okay. Alright, so now what we're going to do, we've got our new fully charged battery in, we're going to start the car up, and we're going to check the charge rate. Okay, so we want to get our multimeter and set it to volts DC. So that one there, voltage DC. Okay, so what we're checking here is we're going to check the alternator output. So we're going to get the black lead of our multimeter onto the negative battery terminal, the red lead of our multimeter onto the positive battery terminal. So I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera there, but we're charging at 14.5 volts, which is absolutely spot on. Okay, so as you can see from the multimeter there, we were charging at 14.56 volts, which is absolutely spot on. That's exactly what you want. Note that some cars' charge rate will be different. So some cars will use, will run at about 13.6. Some cars may even run down to about 12.6. They're the cars that have got what are called smart alternators in them. So they only charge the battery when they need to. So what you'll see is they'll stay at 12.6, they'll never go above that, but they'll never go under that either. That's a lot of modern cars use that kind of stuff. So this one was charging at 14.6 volts, which is perfect. Majority of cars out there will run between sort of 13.6 to 14.6 volts. You don't really, on a car that's got a standard alternator on it like this one, you don't want to see it anywhere sort of under 13.6. That means it's undercharging, but you also don't want to see it over 14.6, that could mean it's overcharging. A little bit over is okay, so sort of 14.7, that's okay. Anything over that, it is getting into the realm of overcharging. Anything over 15 volts, you have an issue with the charging system. Anything over 15 volts could cause damage to the battery. Majority of batteries as well will have a sign on them that says what their maximum charging voltage is. Majority of batteries that have that sign on there do say 14.8 volts. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to check the current draw of the car. So the car's all switched off, everything's turned off. The only thing that's open is the bonnet, which shouldn't matter in a Subaru. Some cars will have a little alert on the screen in the car that says the bonnet's open, which may cause a little bit of extra power draw as well. Okay, so we're going to grab our amp clamp. So this is our amp clamp. What we want to do is we want to put it on amps DC, which is the flat line and then the dotted line underneath. So that's on amps DC at the moment. We want to put it against the lead, so not around the lead. Zero the amp clamp off, which we've done. And with the front of the amp clamp pointing towards the battery, we want to connect the amp clamp. So put it just around the lead there. As close to the battery terminal as what we can get it. So what we're looking for here is we're looking to see how much power the car is draining out when everything in the car is switched off. So at the moment we are at 0.00 amps. That means that the car is draining absolutely nothing from the battery, which is perfect. That's what we want to see. Some cars that have got lots of computers in them, modern cars, bits and pieces, they will run a little bit higher. They'll run at maybe 0.5 of an amp up to sort of 0.8 of an amp. Anything over 0.8 is probably starting to get into the realm of it's a little bit excessive. Anything over 1 amp is excessive. So if it's got anything over 1 amp, when everything in the car is switched off and the car's been sitting for a little bit, that's excessive and it will cause battery drain. Keep in mind that directly after you've switched the car off, sometimes the computers in the car will still be switched on. They take a few minutes to turn themselves off. So if you connect this directly after you've switched the car off, sometimes you will see drain still on the battery. If you leave it for around about 5 minutes, it should drop off to what it's meant to be. So just keep that in mind as well when you are checking current draw. If you do have issues with constant flat batteries with a new battery, definitely something to check. If you don't have the tools to do it yourself, get it into an auto electrician or a workshop and get them to check it for you. You can check this with a multimeter as well. All you need to do there is you need to set it to amps DC, disconnect the negative battery terminal and use your prongs on your multimeter to join the battery terminal and the battery lead together, and then that will tell you the same reading as well. Okay, so we're all good there. Alright guys, that's pretty much the end of the video. A couple more handy tips to know. So if you are having issues with your battery, having issues starting the car, first thing to do would be to get your alternator output checked to make sure that the alternator is functioning correctly and doing what it's meant to do in charging the battery. If the alternator output is fine and the alternator is working as it should, get your current draw from the battery checked with everything in the car switched off to make sure that there's nothing else in the car that's remaining on, causing your battery to drain and go flat. Another handy thing to know as well, an average battery life is anywhere from 3 to 5 years depending on the brand of the battery, the style of the battery and how the car's being driven. Cars that get short little trips around town, the batteries don't tend to last as long as a car that's driven a couple of hours every single day. Keep that in mind. Another thing to check as well, if you are having issues starting the car but the battery's fine and the alternator is fine, it could be an issue with the starter motor. So another handy thing to get checked as well. But if the battery's fine and the alternator's fine and everything in the car as far as the electrical system is working as it should, but the car still won't start, get your starter motor checked as well. A common sign of a starter motor is when you go to start the car, you don't get anything, you get one nice big solid click and that's it. You won't get anything other than that. Sometimes as far as getting the car to go with a faulty starter motor, all you need to do is get a screwdriver or a hammer or something like that, give the starter motor a bit of a tap on the solenoid, bit of a tap on the side of the starter motor, and sometimes that'll be enough just to get them to go. Some cars, the starter motors are quite hard to get to, so that isn't practical in all situations. Just keep in mind, when you're disposing of the old battery, it can't be thrown into your general waste. Old batteries need to be disposed of in the correct manner, whether it be taken to a proper battery recycler, an automotive parts store that does collect old batteries. Often some tips will have a location where you can dump old batteries as well, but they do need to be disposed of properly as they do have quite nasty chemicals and parts inside the batteries. Alright guys, that's about the end of the video there. That was just a quick video on how to replace a battery in your car. If you do have any questions or comments or anything like that, leave them in the comment section below. I'll link the Century website in the description so you can go and match up a battery for your car. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to use a Century battery, but you can use that to find all the details of the battery for your car so you can get some prices from different brands. If you guys like the video, press the thumbs up button. If you have anything you'd like to say, again, put it in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this, press the subscribe button, go watch my other videos, and hope you're having a great day. See ya!